What's the most idiotic rule you've ever been expected to abide by? In 5th grade, my friend and I were walking through the mostly empty school to get to our bus at the end of the day. A teacher was walking in the opposite direction towards us, and yelled at us to walk in a line. So we made a line, just the two of us, and walked like that to our bus. But, a line can be drawn from any 2 points. You had already formed a line. I went to a semi-boarding high school. About 10% of students boarded, and new dorms were constructed while I was there. We had a big meeting, and the principal said no students of the opposite gender in your dorm room, we don't want anyone fricking. A bit paraphrased. One of the students stood up and said, what about the gay kids, they get to frick. So for about a month, the rule was no students of the opposite or same gender in your dorm room, with the exception of your roommate. I am an EMS helicopter pilot. I fly with night vision goggles. Problem: the FAA rules for using NVGs state that the aircraft must also be equipped with a working radar altimeter. So if I am flying over the Sierra Nevada mountains on a pitch black night and the radar altimeter fails, I have to take the night vision goggles off. Fixed wing pilot here. Your first job is ensuring the safe arrival of your aircraft. Screw the rules if you have to. Just land safely. One time at my high school, some kid got busted dealing pot from a bathroom near the auditorium. As a result, students were barred from using that bathroom for the rest of the semester. I'm sure that completely solved the problem. My high school closed a bathroom because someone got caught fricking in it. It lasted about 2 weeks before there were too many lates caused by kids having to sprint across campus just to pee. Elementary school in Canada, we were not allowed to form circles. During recess and such. As you get older, you kinda get into that whole oh look at me, I am getting older and cooler and I just stand around and talk with people instead of fricking around in the snow type of thing. And apparently as forming circles are a safety hazard because supervising teachers couldn't see anything going on in the middle of the circle. I mean, God forbid, what if we were making a circle inside of that circle? You guys should have made a square to frick with them. I once took a part-time job from a temp agency at a Toys R Us distribution warehouse where my job was to cut open boxes, place it all on a pallet and put the pallet in the bottom of the stacks. Large shelves. We were all just extra people they needed for the extra Christmas workload. Met all kinds of interesting people including an elderly husband and wife who were farmers trying to make ends meet. Well anyway, the one person in charge of us was an absolute C. She was a permanent Toys R Us employee. We were treated like crap. Oftentimes we didn't have any boxes to cut open and were made to stand still at our tables. Large, but low metal tables with 4 people to stand around and do nothing. If we moved around or heaven forbid we sat down on the table, we were screamed at. I guess they thought if we were going to be paid for doing nothing, that we should suffer for it. Standing in one spot for up to 4 hours straight would absolutely kill my back. I have run into a lot of jobs where the rules seem to be just made to punish employees. Oftentimes because of what some bad employee did in the past and now all future employees have to pay for it. I worked at a Toys R Us store for Christmas as extra help stacking the empty shelves overnight. We had a rule that if there was nothing to do you'd go to the warehouse in the back and drive around like a maniac in those little electric toy cars. I don't think this was official policy though. At a previous job, I was instructed not to keep any document or email for longer than 6 months, and that my computer would be audited to ensure compliance. This included program source code. I was a programmer. On the plus side, not a lot of legacy code to worry about. Giving up my nail clippers at airport security. I fly the planes. Clearly, you're trying to take Conta. Wait, what? I am a system admin for a company that had a proposal to do some work for a large bank. They told us we needed to comply with their security procedures for data storage, and mentioned the name of the document in an email. When we asked for a copy of the document so we could make sure we were compliant, we were told that we couldn't see it as it was an internal bank document, and not allowed to be transmitted outside their network. TL. DR was told to comply with a security document we weren't allowed to see. That's also how US law works now. I worked at Pizza Hut for a while. We got an order for 5 pepperoni pizzas. So I laid out 5 discs of dough, stretched them all, then sauced them all. You know, the most efficient way to do it. The manager came over and said I was doing it wrong. That I had to make each pizza start to finish, place it in the oven, then make the next one. I told him he was an idiot and kept doing it the efficient way. GM came in later and totally had my back. Christ, that's a pathetic victory. I worked in daycare. We had classroom ratios. Say one teacher must be in the room for every 5 children there. My new boss wanted us to call her when we needed to go to the bathroom and wait for her to come and cover us for the time it took us to go pee. Okay, so this doesn't sound so bad. Except we'd call her and she'd tell us to hold it. Or she'd say that she was busy with something and would be there in a second. And then a half an hour later when we're slinking down the hall to the bathroom she'd yell at us for being in the hall. She also wrote me up for being too loud. In a daycare, I was singing songs to infants during circle time, and they were all sitting quietly and clapping. She was crazy. Didn't happen to me personally, but my sister is severely mentally and physically handicapped, wheelchair bound and frequently has health issues or doctor's appointments, which inevitably led to many missed classes. Despite this, we've gotten countless phone calls and messages on the machine informing us that my sister has earned an in-school suspension for her missed classes. Dang, that's a good way to get your school sued. Justin, for your information, I'm not saying you should, I'm just stating fact. This sort of thing is inevitably going to elicit a knee-jerk reaction from an upset parent. I wasn't allowed to watch PG-13 or higher movies, or the book, comic, game, act equivalent, until I moved out of my parents' house at 19. Additionally, I was not allowed to have my computer in my room. Not entirely unreasonable. The weird thing about that is it kept being true after I got married and was just visiting. See, in that case what you say is okay. We're going to stay at a hotel then. Not me, but I went to high school with a guy who had very overprotective, stereotypical Asian parents. He then went to college a 5-hour drive away from his folks and lived at college, so when he was away, for all his parents knew, he could have been doing coke and going to strip clubs 5 nights a week. But when he came home for holidays, he had to be in before it got dark out. Even when he was over 21, when Batman Begins came out, his parents only let him go see it with me and some friends because we lied to him for his own good and said my mom was driving us to the theater. We were all 21 plus. TLDR. Friends' parents made him be home before it got dark out every night and only let him go see a movie when he was 21 because they thought my mom was going with us. In schools, if someone tries to fight you and you don't want to, you can't even defend yourself. The rule is if you throw a punch or perform any other violent act, you've consented to the fight. Are you a 140-pound freshman about to get killed by a senior? Did you hit them once in self-defense but got sent to the hospital? Well, guess what, kiddo? You've got 5 days out of school suspension. We actually have in our rulebook the penalties for setting off a bomb. Is that necessary? It was even worse at my high school. Your butt was suspended even if you sat there and did nothing. I worked at a zoo and we weren't allowed to use the word evolution. In high school, I left campus after class and got some ice cream. I came back 20 minutes later to meet with my teacher for help on calculus. When I walked into campus, I was stopped by one of the ladies on yard duty who informed me that I'm not allowed to come back on campus after leaving. I explained to her that I was coming back for tutoring, but she didn't care. Long story short, she took me to the admin office and turned me in, and they gave her weird looks and told her what I was doing was completely fine. Had to wear an aerial harness to climb a 6-foot ladder. OSHA regulations. When I was in primary school, about 7 or so, I remember that we were not permitted to eat Mother Nature lunch bars because they promoted paganism. I ate them every day. Sticking it to the man. Back in high school, our then dean of students, a woman who literally carried around a ruler to see if girls' skirts were too short, tried to bring about a rule where girls had to have sleeve dresses at school dances. That rule didn't last long, as in before the next school dance, one of the female teachers, 35, told her that, after spending the weekend going to different stores, there was not a single sleeve dress that either she or a 16-year-old would want to buy. Half the school would have been in detention if they hadn't taken out that rule. As a guy, I would have deeply considered purchasing and wearing a sleeveless dress to the dance, before chickening out and not going at all. The company I used to work at told us that our emails didn't work externally, and that we could only email each other. It was total rubbish, and everyone knew it. We could email our friends and families anytime, but we had to pretend like nobody actually knew. That's 200 people in the office hiding a secret because the IT guys weren't actually IT guys and had no idea how to set up an internal messaging system. The IT guys knew. They also thought it was a dumb rule and just let email through rather than block it and have to listen to users be. At a private school I went to, it was mandatory for all boys to wear ties on Wednesdays. If you didn't wear one, you were sent to home to get one. Well, one day I forgot. Luckily, I was blessed with the ingenuity of MacGyver that day and made a tie out of a long piece of paper towel. It worked for a couple hours until some buttholes in my class pointed it out. Apparently, paper is not an acceptable material for ties. I was sent home. Once worked at a Chinese restaurant where if you forgot to put the rice on the table's order, white or brown rice which were free, the owner expected you to buy the entire table's meal out of your paycheck. It happened to me once in the 6 months I was there and they told me to pay the $50 tab for the table. I told them if they enforce that rule I'd walk out in the middle of service. They didn't enforce the rule. In my elementary school a few times a week they would take the brighter students and put them in a class 1 or 2 grade levels higher to help teach maturity. I was finished my work, grade 4. I was put into a grade 6 class and didn't have anything to do, so I started doing the other class work. After I finished, I went to the teacher and asked if I had done it correctly and proceeded to be chastised for the next 30 minutes. Apparently there's some taboo on challenging yourself. When I was in high school there was a rule that students were not allowed to grow facial hair in any form. If a student tried to grow facial hair or just plain didn't have the time to shave before getting to class, which started at 7 AM, he was sent to the disciplinary office, scolded by the vice principal, and forced to shave with a single-bladed disposable razor and no shaving cream. Multiple of my friends faced this punishment. I asked several teachers why this rule was in effect, and most of them simply stated that they didn't know. I got one answer out of the dozen teachers I asked, and that was, it's so that the students don't look like they're older and get mistaken as faculty. This would allow them to roam the halls and not get sent back to class. To which I could only respond, why don't you just learn what your co-workers look like? The football coach was not happy with me after that. My high school did this as well, for the same faculty mix-up reason, though we could get a medical waiver to grow facial hair. I found that to be totally freaking mind-blowing. To make a rule, enforce it, and then give a goddamn loophole. I was homeschooled through high school, and when I was applying to schools, I had this conversation with the local college's admissions folks. Admissions, okay, and we'll need a copy of your high school transcript. Me, oh, I don't have one. I was homeschooled. Admissions, okay, we'll still need a transcript. Me, right, but I don't actually have one. Admissions, well, we need a transcript to let you in, so you'll have to send us one. And me, you realize that no such thing actually exists, so I'm going to have to make something up. Admissions, that's fine. So I did, and was promptly accepted. This will be a metaphor for life, take note. Not mine, but at my friend's work. Not allowed to download Firefox because it's not secure. Main browser was IE6. To show school support when the school song was played, students would link arms and sway side to side. We got a new principal who immediately banned swaying due to its suggestive nature. Any student caught swaying will be suspended, and we were. This was 1972. He was fired in 1973. In 2002, my oldest child had this weird substitute teacher in one of her high school classes. She commented about strange rules and his bad attitude. When she said his name, all I could do was laugh. It was my old principal. No holding hands or hugging rule in high school. In junior high during our school dances, whenever two people danced, their naughty parts had to be a basketball apart, made for some real awkward looking slow dancing. We weren't allowed to talk, at lunch, in the cafeteria. Grade 6-8. Years 7-11 in the academy I go to, but I'm in year 12 now, so don't have to wear uniform. Have to wear thick black blazers year round, and you're not allowed to take them off for any reason, except science experiments and art. In '09 there was a mini heat wave and we still weren't allowed to take off our blazers. Many detentions were given over that week for taking off the blazers so we wouldn't get too hot. No Linux in high school because it was classified as a hacking tool. My high school's cafeteria was too small to legally hold all of the students, fire code reasons. For this reason, I would eat lunch in the band room. My senior year, they cracked down on this. The principal called an assembly and announced that all students would be required to spend the lunch period in the cafeteria. At this point, I stood up and said, "Do you realize that would require exceeding the legal capacity of the cafeteria, breaking the law and putting students' safety at risk?" The principal responded with, "Well, sometimes you have to make do with what you have." I don't think fire marshals play that game. I got sent down to the office to get an out of uniform slip on an out of uniform day. At my elementary school, we had a very strict no snowball policy. This doesn't mean no throwing snowballs at people. This means picking up snow and forming a ball is not allowed. So anyway, in grade 6, me and my friends were throwing snowballs at a tree for fun one day. We got caught and had to write a letter apologizing and explaining why it was wrong and whose feelings we hurt. I wrote the tree. If you wrote it on paper, I'm not too sure you learned your lesson. I install people's computers and remove old ones. Because it's a union building, I can't carry a flat panel monitor, 10 pounds, 90 feet down a hallway. We had the same sort issues when I worked at Kennedy Space Center. Couldn't move desks, computers, or any type of equipment. I was on vacation with my girlfriend at the time, and her dad had a no peeing standing up rule. Literally, I was not allowed to pee standing up in his house. He said this to me at the beginning of the vacation, and I thought he meant to make sure the toilet seat was down after I used it, since he only had daughters and wanted to protect them or something. So, one time when I was peeing standing up, as any man would, my girlfriend's mom says from outside the door that she can hear someone peeing while standing up. Still taking this as a joke, I admitted that it was me. I then got a 30-minute lecture on how I should obey his rules and not pee standing up. Still one of my biggest WTF moments in a relationship. 1. I was 21 at the time this happened. 2. I was never given the true reason for this rule. He said something about protecting his daughters, maybe not wanting to hear a man peeing or something. I wasn't really paying attention during his lecture, so most of it went over my head. 3. I listened to him lecture me because he was a military man. My GF's parents already hated everything I did, and I didn't want to cause any more problems. In our student handbook at my high school, I found this gem. Any step measuring longer than 2 feet is to be considered running indoors and punished appropriately. As a 6-foot tall person with knee problems, basically every step I take is more like 3 feet. I was given in school suspension for 2 days. Logically, I then organized a long step protest and got about 70 people to take large, exaggerated steps down the main hallway. To show how stupid he felt, he called another emergency assembly to apologize, to which he wore a purple and gold clown suit and a dunce cap. That's probably the best way he could have handled that. I'm surprised nobody told him during those 2 months. I went to a Catholic school from 1st to 8th grade, so you can imagine just how many absolutely ridiculous rules we had to follow, but I think the worst was when we got a male principal and he made a rule that we were no longer allowed to wear shorts under our skirts. At the time I was only upset about it because it made no sense to me since no one could even see the shorts, but once I got older I realized just how sick it was. You know, I think I would have told my kids to wear the shorts, and to call me and tell me every time someone reported one of them for wearing the shorts. Let's see. I worked a crap ton of overtime because I was the last person on my team who hadn't quit because my manager was such an imbecile bee. So I was stuck doing the work of an entire team, working late into the night, often past midnight, and over many weekends. Then she decides that I don't get any, not even 15 minutes of flex time. So if I have to miss 15 minutes of work, I have to report it and get docked. Then she decides that if I'm 5 minutes late to work, I have to report it and it will show negatively on my performance review. So yeah, I don't work at McDonald's. I work as a software analyst for a major university. I've never been treated so poorly in my life. I quit and moved to a different department where we can pretty much come and go as we please, so long as the work gets done. Still put in loads of overtime, but I'm more than happy to. TLDR, incompetent hyper-controlling freak shot herself in the foot. While working at a store, I was not allowed to flatten boxes outside of the box flattening area. I was in Punitive, which is a Canadian program that is basically a government-sanctioned cult, where youth 17-22 get to travel to 3 places in Canada doing volunteer work. They cover your transportation, housing, and activities, and you get an allowance of $3 a day. It sounds great if you want to travel and have no savings, except they have some bizarre rules, which make it sort of like a hippie-ish commune where everyone is supposed to love everyone else equally. You are not allowed to have close friends or physical relations at all. So here we were, a bunch of 17-22-year-olds, stuck in rural Manitoba in -45-degree winter. No TV or recreation at the house, except lots of snow and cows. What do you think happened? Out of 11 people, 8 of them hooked up. We had to meet each other in secret, because we would get disciplined if it was found out. On our weekend off, a bunch of us decided to get hotel rooms, and gasp, couples shared rooms together. Our group leader disciplined us and gave us strikes. I already had 2 strikes for insignificant things, so I was told to leave the program. I was also disciplined because I spent too much time hanging out with a female friend, instead of like 6 people at once singing in a circle like they wanted us to do. It was a pretty bizarre social experiment, kind of like Big Brother, except nobody wins. At my high school, when someone was late, they would just have the teacher mark tardy on their computer. Most students were never more than a minute late. They just couldn't get to class fast enough and would walk in 30 seconds late or so. Our principal had the brilliant idea of instead having a tardy table all the way across the school where students would go, line up, and register as being tardy. If you were late to class, the teacher would send you to the tardy table instead of just marking you late themselves. Instead of having a teacher mark the 1 or 2 people who showed up tardy to their class, you had late students from all classes lining up to register as tardy with only one person to process them at the tardy table. The result was students ending up 15-30 minutes late to class because they were waiting in line to register as tardy. The parents were not pleased, but the principal insisted that it would reduce the number of students who were late overall. I'm not sure if they kept it or not. The tardy table was started just a few months before I quit school. Public schools always have the dumbest rules though. Make a gun with your index finger and thumb and it's 0 tolerance. Bully the gay kid and meh, whatever. In grade 6, the principal of our elementary school got annoyed by everyone hugging to say hello and goodbye, so he banned it. No students were allowed to hug each other on school property. In all fairness, I'm sure many an embarrassing preteen boner was saved. At my former company, much of my work depended on being able to send and receive email, yet no one except management level was allowed to have their own email address, or even access the outside internet through the company LAN. I was inside an office and had to surreptitiously steal a phone line and get on my own personal dial-up account to do my job. Protests to management, of course, proved fruitless. It was all in the name of security. I'm in high school and they give all teachers emails to communicate with each other and with the students. So we email each other questions and homework, etc. But email sites are blocked unless you're a faculty member. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.